Rejected Moon. Episode 13, The Summons. Written by Mia. The Risen came up into the scattered pack's hidden fold at moonrise, and they did not attack, and that was how I knew everything had changed. There were a dozen of them, climbing slow and patient out of the white below, hollow shapes with the flat silver dark eyes, and the pack came awake screaming, 40 broken survivors who'd lost everything to exactly this, scrambling for the high rocks, the children snatched up, the few warriors forming a ragged line with their teeth bared and their hearts already gone to water. Kale was up and moving before I'd fully woken, Ronan a half step behind, the two of them between the dead, and the living the way they were always between me and the dark now. "Hold," I said. And then, louder, because the warriors were about to throw their lives at a thing that hadn't come for them. "Hold. Don't strike them. They're not here for you." They weren't. I knew it the way I was learning to know things now, down the new cold since the white light had opened in me. The Risen came up the rocks, and they did not turn toward the screaming pack, did not reach for the warriors, did not so much as glance at the children. They came to the center of the fold, to the cave mouth where I stood, and they stopped, all 12 of them, in a loose ring around me, and they turned their hollow faces to mine, and simply waited. Patient, attentive, the way a thing waits at a door it has been told to hold open. "They're an escort," I said, and my voice did not sound like mine. "Not a war party. A summons. She sent them to bring me down. Lark knows I read the book. She felt me understand. And now she's reaching up out of the deep with the only hands she has left, the dead ones, to call her sister's daughter home." The pack did not understand it, and I couldn't blame them. From the high rocks, all they could see was a ring of their nightmares standing around the thing they blamed for their nightmares, and more than one voice up in the dark was already saying the obvious, cruel thing. She summoned them. She's one of them. Throw her down to them, and let's be done. I heard it, and let it pass. There wasn't time to teach them theology, and it would have been a lie of omission to deny it, because in a way they were right. My blood had summoned them, the same blood that woke the dark and walked among its dead untouched. I stood in the ring of hollow faces and felt no fear of them at all, and that was its own horror, that the dead my aunt sent felt, to the new cold sense in me, almost like family, almost like the only things in this snowy fold that weren't afraid of me. And I understood, standing there, how Moonborn alone in the dark 300 years might come to prefer the company of the unmade to the company of the living who'd thrown her away. The dark doesn't flinch from you. That's the terrible comfort it offers. It is the one place a thrown-away thing is never looked at like a problem. "Then we kill them," Kale said, "and we move the pack, and we put 100 miles between you and wherever that thing sleeps." He'd gone pale.
"Wren.
You are not seriously standing there looking at a ring of corpses. You're mad. Aunt sent to fetch you like it's a door you mean to walk through." "It is a door I mean to walk through." "It's a grave," Ronan said, and there was something in his voice I'd never heard, the king's control cracking all the way down to the man underneath.
"Wren.
I read your face in that cave. I felt it down the bond when you finished the book. Whatever your mother wrote, it wasn't a way to win. It was a way to die, or worse than die, and you decided to do it, and you haven't told me yet because you know exactly what I'll say." He stepped close, gripped my arms, and the warriors looked away because a king doesn't beg in front of his people, and Ronan was about to. "So tell me I'm wrong. Tell me the plan in your mother's book isn't walk into the deep alone and open your soul to the thing that eats souls. Tell me, and I'll let go of your arms." I didn't tell him because I was done lying to the people I kept, and the truth was exactly that. "You can't," he said, reading it. "Wren, you can't. I have spent my whole life being willing to lose anything for the war, my pack, my city, myself. I made my peace with all of it. And then you walked out of a poor little pack in a borrowed dress, and I found the one thing I'm not willing to lose. And you are standing here telling me the only way to save the world is to throw it down a hole.
No.
Find another way. There's always another. There isn't. I said it gently because I loved him and because it was true. There's never been another. That's what 300 years of the wisest wolves in the world decided, and they were right. And the only reason there's even this terrible way is that my mother loved a sister enough to work it out and a daughter enough to make her able to try. I put my hand over his on my arm. I'm not going tonight. I'm not ready, and I won't walk into the deep half-trained and have it eat me in an hour and call that brave. But I'm going, Ronan, when it's time. And I needed you to hear it from me. Standing up, not find it out after. You told me once you'd lose the war before you'd lose me. I'm asking you for the harder thing now. I'm asking you to let me lose myself, if that's what it costs, and not stop me, because stopping me is just the council's arithmetic again. Keep the bell safe. Let the world rot slow. I won't do it. Not even for you. Especially not for you, because you're the first person who ever made me feel like I was worth keeping, and the only way to be worth it is to be the thing you fell for, and not a coward hiding behind a king. It was Kale who broke first, and that surprised both of them, I think. Kale, who'd thrown me away once and learned the whole shape of that mistake, standing in the snow with his fists clenched. She's right, he said to Ronan, hating it, the words dragged out of him.
King.
I know you don't want to hear it from me, of all wolves, but I'm the one in this fold who already tried the other thing. I looked at the most dangerous thing the moon ever made, and I decided the safe move was to put it out, to keep my pack small and quiet and alive, and it cost me everything, and it cost them everything. He nodded at the broken pack on the rocks, and it didn't even keep them safe. It just made the dark a little hungrier. The council's way doesn't work. Keeping her caged for our comfort doesn't work. I have the graves to prove it. He looked at me, and there was no wanting in it now, only a terrible, hard-won clarity. Let her go down, Ronan, when she's ready. And God help me, I'll walk her to the edge of the dark myself, because I'm the man who learned the hard way that you don't keep a thing safe by refusing to let it be what it is. He didn't answer. He couldn't. And into the terrible silence, I did the reckless thing, the thing I'd been building toward since the dead woman in Harrowmere called me sister. I turned to the nearest risen, a young man. He'd been broad-shouldered, someone's son, and I looked into the flat silver dark of his stolen eyes, and I opened my thread. Just a crack. The way I'd open a door in a house I knew held something dangerous, slow, one hand on the frame. I reached down the new cold scents, down the escort's ring, down into the deep where the summons came from, and I said, with the part of me that was bell and blood and the last of a line, one word into the dark.
Lark.
And the dark answered. It was not words at first. It was weight, 300 years of it, poured up the thread into me all at once, and I staggered, and Kale caught me, and I waved him off because I could not be touched. Not now, I was somewhere else. I was in the deep. I was in the dark where they'd sealed a 19-year-old girl who'd smiled and called it an honor, and I felt what 3 centuries alone in the black does to a soul, the slow unmaking, the forgetting, the hunger that grows to fill the space where everything you loved used to be. I felt my aunt, and under the vast hollow hunger of the severed, down in some ruined cellar the dark hadn't quite finished eating, I felt one small, unbearable thing still flickering, still her, still Lark, and it knew me. It knew my mother and me. It knew the blood. I have tried, since, to describe what it is to touch a mind that has been alone in the absolute dark for 300 years, and I can't, not really. The nearest I can come is this. Imagine being a child shut in a lightless room, and at first you scream, and then you weep, and then, because a soul cannot bear its own company forever with nothing to push against, you begin very slowly to forget there was ever an outside. You forget the names of colors. You forget your own face. You forget, last of all, and most terribly, that the screaming was ever about anything until the screaming is just the shape of you, the weather you're made of. That was my aunt. 3 centuries of a scream that had forgotten it was once a girl. And into that, into a soul that had forgotten the very idea of another, fell the taste of the moon, the taste of her sister, the one thread of warmth that had ever belonged to her, and I felt the whole vast hunger of the severed turn toward me at once, ravenous, and I felt, in the same instant, the tiny buried thing recoil from its own hunger and horror, because some last splinter of lark knew the warmth for family and could not bear to eat it. And the thing that came up the thread then was not a summons. It was the opposite. It was the last human shred of my aunt, spending what little of herself remained to force one true thing past the hunger, and it reached my mind not as a roar but as a whisper, a girl's voice, frightened, 300 years frightened, saying, "Don't come, little bird. I can feel you. You taste like her, like the moon, like everything they took, and the part of me that loves you, the part that's still your aunt, still Lark, still the girl who told her little sister to think of her when she looked at the moon, that part is so small now, littlest bird, so nearly gone, and it is using the very last of itself to tell you the truth your mother was too kind to write plainly. I cannot be saved. There is not enough of me left to save. If you come down here, if you open your sweet soul to me the way the book says, I will not be able to stop. The hunger is so much bigger than the love now. I will eat you, and I will be glad, and there will be 2 of us in the dark, and the world will end.
So don't be brave.
Brave is what got me here. Be a coward, little Wren. Be the thing they made you, small and hidden and alive. Look at the moon and think of me, the way your mother did, and let me finish becoming the dark and stay away, stay away, stay away. And then the hunger swallowed the whisper, and the young man's hollow eyes went flat again, and the thread snapped shut, and I came back to myself on my knees in the snow with Kale's arms around me and Ronan's face above me, white as the dead, and the whole pack staring, and the 12 risen turned away as one and began, slowly, to walk back down into the white. The escort recalled, the door left open, the summons withdrawn by the last act of love a dying god had left in her. She told me not to come, I whispered. My face was wet, freezing. Ronan.
Kale.
She used the last of herself to warn me off. She knows she can't be saved. She's right that she can't be saved. I let them lift me up out of the snow, between the 2 of them, the way they'd carried me through everything. Which means my mother was wrong about the method, and the book is wrong, and there is no saving Lark, no releasing her, no giving her a clean death by love. I stopped, because standing in the snow with my aunt's 300-year-old terror still cold in my chest, I understood the thing the warning had accidentally told me, the thing Lark and her love had not meant to give me, the thing that changed the whole war one more time. She can still love, I said slowly. There's not enough of her left to be saved. But there was enough to warn me. Enough to be afraid for me instead of hungry for me. For 10 whole seconds, 300 years into the dark. The council said a severed is nothing but hunger. They were wrong. They're wrong about everything. They always were. I looked up at the moon, the way 2 dead women had taught me. If there's enough of Lark left to love me, then there's enough left to reach.
not to save, to free. Do you see?
The book said save her, and the book was wrong, because there's a girl-shaped emptiness where Lark used to be, and you cannot save an emptiness. You can only feed it or fill it. But the warning changed the question. A thing that can spend its last strength to protect you isn't only hunger. It's hunger with one window left open, and through a window you cannot save someone, but you can do the smaller, harder, only possible thing. You can climb in and sit with them in the dark, and stay long enough and love hard enough that when the end comes they remember, for one clean moment, that they were a person who was loved, and they let go as that person, and not as the dark. Not salvation, not victory. A good death, given by the only hand that could reach. The same mercy I gave the 40 in Harrowmere. Release, not rescue, but scaled to the size of a buried god and paid for, maybe with my own soul, because to climb through that window I'd have to leave it open behind me, and the hunger is so much bigger than the love. And I finally understand why my mother made me, and it isn't courage and it isn't power. It's that I'm the only person left in the world. I said that the dark still loves enough to let close. To be continued. That was episode 13 of Rejected Moon. If the moon has you now, the next episode is waiting. Subscribe so you don't lose the trail. The complete book is available on Amazon, and early episodes and bonus chapters are on my Patreon. Links are in the description.
I've Mia.
Thank you for listening.